Hello and welcome to LetsTok, the podcast for human skills and mindset. Today, we are going to discuss about branding, or rather personal branding, within the organization or all life in general. There are different perspectives of brands. Some people think about brand as a commodity, as a product. Some people think brand about a status. And some people think brand is about a stature, a personality. Everyone has their own definition. I spent some time about understanding what brand is. And for me, brand is more abstract in terms of what is the gut feeling about a certain product, a company, services, a personality. Or I would say the brand is about the reputation which you built over the period of time when another human being, when they try to interact with you, would eventually understand to what to expect, what that person is all about. Even they haven't met face to face, they have a certain kind of camaraderie, certain kind of relationship. To extend that, uh, we know all these famous personalities like Tony Robbins, Gary Vaynerchuk. They have spent so much of time to create their brand. Now, whatever they say, people listen and try to really follow through because they have really spent that time to create their brand. Today, my guest is also one of such example. Uh, for 6 to 7 months, when I have followed him through our social media, I have seen what kind of perspective he brings, and he has a lot of things in terms of creating a personal brand. He has his own story about it, and specifically in social selling, what he's doing in the community. Because he's so much in goodness around personal branding, I will not explain anything about him and let him explain about what the personal brand and who is that gentleman. So Carson Heady, thank you so much for providing the time. And please let the audience know who is Carson Heady and what's his philosophy.
Oh, thank you so much, Rob, for having me. This is great. I consider myself extremely fortunate because in my mind, I'm still just a small town guy from the Midwest US, right? So I've been really fortunate to be a lifelong student of selling and leadership, and been with Microsoft for about the last 8.5 years. And I was at AT&T for 8.5 years prior. I've always been in selling and sales leadership roles. And it was in 2010, I had a very serendipitous good fortune of writing a book and getting it published the old-fashioned way. And my publisher told me, hey, go out and get on all of these social channels. And when I was at AT&T is when I first got onto LinkedIn, didn't know much about it. When I wrote the book is when I first got on Twitter, didn't know anything about it. And all the while, it was a learning for me. I started to realize, some of the things that I could do to create content, go out and follow people that were following what I was passionate about, and authentically connect. And over a decade of doing that, it's been an incredible journey. I've written 4 more books since then. But also, the first book that I wrote led me to what was ultimately my next role. A relationship that I made there led me to my next role, and a relationship that I made there led me to Microsoft. And it's interesting to me too. Today, I'm a sales director in our health and life sciences business. And, my most recent book has been my best-selling Salesman on Fire. But what's fascinating to me, Sarab, is, how much I've learned about branding over time. In recent years, becoming recognized as the #1 social seller in all of Microsoft, obviously a global company. I've trained in 8 countries and, been able to contribute and have a high impact around the world, which is mind-boggling to me because, again, I'm still just that small town kid from the Midwest US. So that's a little bit about me. Lifelong student of selling. I've learned a lot over the last few years about just how valuable relationships and resources are. I've been very resourceful, realized I don't have to be the smartest person in the room. I just have to authentically invest and nurture relationships. And it's served me very well. So always looking to solve problems with some of the resources that I've come across, which is what's helped me from a social selling perspective, but also now even as a leader with things like going out and creating executive relationships with my team. So it's been a phenomenal ride and really happy to share some of that learning here today with you.
So as you mentioned about that you are from the small town in Midwest and you learn about these things. So what is your motivation factor? Like some people always mention about what is brand? I mean, okay, I do XYZ work in a certain way and I really like it. Would that be a brand? Would or I have to be on a social circuit and people recognize me? Would that be a brand? Or if, for example, I'm a cybersecurity expert and I'm totally deep into the four walls and protecting my customers or world in a way which doesn't involve a lot of people, is that a brand? What's your definition of brand, Carson?
Yeah, very astute observation, Saurabh, because it can be a variety of things, and it's very personal to you. For me, it's been finding what are my unique strengths and superpowers. What can I do well? It's interesting when I joined Microsoft 8.5 years ago. On paper, I didn't belong here. I don't have a technology background. My background was in telecommunications and advertising. But where I found success was building a community around what we did, being an orchestrator of relationships, going out and finding all of the executive relationships that we needed, finding ways to deliver value and resources as opposed to just showing up trying to sell and earning the right to be a trusted advisor. And it worked. So your brand is, finding your passions, finding your unique superpowers, and figuring out how do I position these in a way that I'm a thought leader or an influencer in this space. There's a lot of different ways that you can perpetuate that too. For me, LinkedIn was super helpful. Social platforms are super helpful. I have over 300,000 followers across multiple platforms. But you can blog, you can make video, you can contribute to all of these different platforms to perpetuate your brand. But ultimately, it's about seeking to serve. It's how can I replicate my unique superpowers into wins for other people or solving problems for other people? What do you want to be known for? What are you super passionate about? So it's a combination of all of those things. 12 years ago when I wrote my first book, I had no idea where it could go. But where I really tried to focus was I knew I could control three things. One, the quality of my content or messaging, what I was posting, what I was sending, what I was saying, and how I was doing it. Also, the quantity, where am I? I don't discriminate against any potential platform. Actually, ironically, I literally just joined TikTok. I knew nothing about it. I thought it was just where people danced and did dancing videos. But I made a video just yesterday about your network being your net worth. And, we'll see where that goes. But I think it's, finding different ways to deliver your message, what you're passionate about, in a means to start authentic conversations, because that's what it's all about. About 2 years ago, at the beginning of the pandemic, I was lamenting to a friend of mine. I was like, I miss just sitting around talking about sales and leadership. And then I realized I can do that with anyone in the world at any time. There's no geographical barriers thanks to technology and digital tools. So I started recording these sessions. And a few months in, people called it my podcast. And I shied away from that term because podcast implies some sort of commitment. And over time, I embraced it because of branding. And I get a lot of outreach now. Hey, can I be on your podcast? Or, people talking about podcasts. And frankly, then later, I started interviewing customer executives on this podcast. So thinking about it as a conduit to enhancing relationships with our target audience, as opposed to just sending them an email trying to sell them something. No, I'd like to know more about your philosophies on leadership and building culture and spotlighting your perspectives. And guess what? We now have some work transpiring with some of these executives and their teams that I've met in that fashion. But that wasn't the original goal. The original goal was just to connect meaningfully. I believe that deals or results, these are a byproduct of relationships and investment and effort. And that's what brand has been for me. So I encourage anyone that is exploring brand, take a step back and look holistically at your body of work. What do you want to be known for? What are your strengths? How can you use those strengths to solve problems? And I always go up a level as well. I try to look at the lens from my VP or from my organization and say, what are they grappling with? How can I use the things that I'm good at to solve their problems? And guess what? Every role that I've ever been pulled into in this company and most others has been because of a relationship. Being promoted numerous times in my career, being given opportunities, these are because of relationships and value that I've been able to bring to the table to deliver results.
That's great. I think let me just summarize a few things which really sticks to my head and for people to learn. As you mentioned, about first understanding what people in your organization, for example, if you are working under an organization, they are facing some challenges, and try to align with what's your skill set or superpowers are. That is one thing. And try to help them out as much as possible, because that willingness to help is so important in that perspective. And the second thing is, you mentioned your network is your net worth. I love that phrase. I think this is something I believe as well. Try to reach out to the people instead of making any restrictions for example, in LinkedIn as well. There are so many connection requests comes in, and you never know what those connection requests makes real connections, some revelations in your life. As I'm growing and getting experience in this podcast and reaching out to the people, I'm getting that benefit, that impact about reaching out to the people, and all good vibes around. And that's, as you mentioned, that getting into a podcast mode, reaching out to the people, that may have a lot of indirect or direct repercussions in terms of the positive side of the house, that how you communicate and connect. So that is so true. So keeping that thought in mind, my next part would be, as you mentioned, that what are your superpowers? What are your life philosophy? What you believe in? This is itself is a very daunting task for a lot of people, because they're doing so much of work around, right? For example, we both are full-time employed. Still, we are doing a lot of things in terms of what we are passionate about. What's your advice to the people who would like to do certain things and try to build a brand around it, but they are procrastinating for various reasons and have imposter syndrome, self-doubt, or that one thing to get started? What's your advice to those people here?
Yeah, first off, Saurabh, great question. I've grappled with all of those things myself. And I think it's key to point that out. I think the only difference between me and anyone else is that I look for and I seize every opportunity that I can, that I think will lead to a way that I can make a unique contribution, a way that I can solve a problem for someone else, or the way that I can have impact. And some things work and some things don't. I've made blogs nobody's read. I've made videos nobody's watched, but I keep putting things out there. And I think that's the key. So my superpower is the ability to orchestrate, the ability to build a community around what I do, what we do. And that has been extremely gratifying, because it's led to very meaningful and real and authentic relationships, with customer executives, with partners, with colleagues. I'm also always looking to learn and grow. When I first started out in sales, I was in a call center and I was listening to people around me, and I would just pick up little tidbits that I liked, and I'd assimilate that into my process. And I still do that. I'm always looking for people that I can learn from, these aspirational mentors and also colleague mentors that are doing what I want to do. If you're doing well at something, I want to learn from you. And if there's something I can share, I'm all in. But it's that giving without any expectation of receipt. I think those are things that have really fueled me. Seeking to serve, seeking to understand. But that's really been my primary superpower has been, I will look for and seize every opportunity. And I think all of us get caught up in some of the day-to-day minutia, right? It's easy to get a lot of emails or instant messages, and we're putting out fires and we're, responding to things, but that happens for us all. You've got to have daily non-negotiables that you kind of go into each day. And so I try to be very intentional about, creation of something from a brand perspective that goes out that is provocative and starts a conversation. And then from there, take a step back, continue to think about, like, what do you want to be known for? What can I do today that'll help me really win the day? And I list off those 5 things, and I do them every day before I get sucked into all the minutia and the messages, because those things aren't ever going to go away. But if you meaningfully and intentionally invest in your brand and in being able to articulate your brand, that is what sets you apart. Now, I talk to a lot of people and they say, I'm not good at bragging about myself, or I'm not good at, talking about myself. Well, here's the thing. You are your own brand and product. So ultimately, wherever you're wanting to go, if it's a promotion, if it's a new job, if it's even just earning the right to be a trusted advisor with a customer, you're going to have to sell yourself. And so understanding how to articulate the value that you bring. Are you responsive? Are you communicative? Are you a great leader? Have you driven results? And how? Have you created mechanisms to help yourself and other people be successful? Being able to articulate that and track tangible results that you've been able to deliver so that you can de-risk the decision that either a customer or a hiring manager is going to make. That's ultimately what you're looking to do. So it's one thing to establish and develop a brand. It's another to continue to invest in it and perpetuate it. And then it's quite another to be able to articulate it whenever you're presenting your strengths and your tangible results to others.
Yes, I agree. I couldn't agree more. And I can kind of see what you mentioned while you were explaining. I was also trying to go a bit of the past when I was trying to start few things, like maybe I'm doing a running, maybe I have some side business from the real estate side. There's always cold feet. There's always butterfly in your stomach. Like, what happens if something goes wrong, which is so natural as a human being, as the psychology side of the house, that we have to be protective, right? Something goes wrong based on how our mind works. But then that's where the mindset or spending more time within yourself comes into the picture. As you mentioned, that as soon as we get into the minutiae, as soon as we get into the emails and try to get into all distracted, why don't we just spend time, maybe wake up an hour before, try to think about what we are doing, what my direction and purpose in my life is. Because I think I was reading somewhere that once you have a purpose and vision is your life, that becomes your center of gravity. And then all the decisions will be around that. So then you will see that you don't have to really work upon what would be my 10th, 11th move. As Oprah Winfrey, she mentioned that always try to see what is your next right move instead of try to overcomplicate the thing and see that what is your 10th, 11th, or 12th move, that maybe I have to become a brand, I have to become a CEO of a company. Do the right thing at this point. What do you think from the next point? And I think you also mentioned about the consistency. It also takes a big I would say accountability and responsibility. When you start something, you have to keep it going. And I was talking to one of the guests, I think yesterday only, and he mentioned that there's only 1% of the podcast when they get started, they go beyond episode 20. So consistency is so much important, as you mentioned, that quality, and you said quality, quantity, and consistency. So consistency is also a part of that. What you're doing, you keep on doing repeatedly. And once you start doing, it becomes more natural. And once it becomes natural, I think that also convert to a brand. And then you don't have to worry about, oh, how do I do this? Am I looking good? Do I have all the right systems and appliances in place? You just go and you create a kind of an aura around that. What's your thought around that part?
I couldn't agree more. I've been really fortunate because, at Microsoft, as an example, several years ago, I started using some of these tools because I kept hearing, the problem is we don't have enough relationships in the other rooms of the house, different business line of business executives. So I asked myself, where are these folks and what do I need to say in order to get a meeting there? And so again, it was focus on the quality of my messaging, quantity of outreach to give me a higher probability of success, and then consistency of execution over time with some of these different tools. And it was different than anything that anyone else was doing. People were either not prospecting or they were just having their tried and true relationships with certain segments, in IT and procurement, that historically that's where we've played. And so it didn't make a lot of sense what I was doing. I was prospecting on LinkedIn, whatever that means, is what people used to say. And then once I started closing multiple multi-million-dollar deals, 11 in 1 year, in fact, that wouldn't have existed without LinkedIn, then it started getting noticed. And I was asked to train others, train on my team, train in the district, train multiple different audiences across the country. Now it's globally. And so becoming known for that, I didn't set out to do that. It wasn't something that I saw happening. So Saurabh, I think you hit on something really important. It's land the step right in front of you. And so, your brand is going to continue to evolve. And I think that's the important thing to spell out here. It all began for me when I wrote that book in 2010, but I didn't sell enough to retire. But it opened doors. It made my resume sparkle because I had done something that was unique. See, that's the thing. It's all about how do we show up amidst a sea of people that are all probably trying to do similar things. There's a lot of people that have roles similar to mine, that have responsibilities similar to mine, but my approach is unique. And so I think if you take a unique approach and a unique lens with which to do things, and you think holistically about what you're trying to do, and again, you understand all the resources that are at your disposal, different tools, different mechanisms, and then you go out and create and invest and nurture relationships. That's ultimately what is going to lead to your brand. And I love that you said that too about, there's a lot of people that do podcasts. I didn't call mine a podcast, but I've now interviewed over 100 people. And it's something that I just make part of my rhythm. I schedule time with people and I'll go out and look for folks, and I get a lot of requests to be on my podcast, but I'll go out and look for folks that, where I know I can learn. So there's a selfish component to it. I'm getting to learn while I'm spotlighting them and their perspective. So there's a good give-get there. But it continues to, there's quality content that I'm delivering. I'm just a conduit. I am bringing my audience, my growing audience, valuable information and knowledge from people that I've managed to connect with. A lot of them that I've never met face-to-face, that have been via LinkedIn or other mechanisms. And so I think, to your point, it's about land the step that's in front of you and let it continue to evolve. It kind of starts as a little snowball, and over time it turns into an avalanche. I could have never fathomed what my brand would take me to. To be globally known at a company like Microsoft, where I get to talk to and train people all over the world frequently. It's beyond my wildest dreams. And I'll put this into perspective too. About 12 years ago, I was leading a call center, and I used to get up every morning in front of 100, 150 salespeople and sales managers and give speeches, right? I'd get the crowd all riled up. I'd get standing ovations, and they'd go out and they'd sell, right? And I thought I had made it. I thought that was the peak of my existence. I didn't think it would ever get any better than that. And I could have never in my wildest dreams imagined what I get to do now. And the cool thing is back then, I was always thinking about what's the next role that I want to go into, right? I'm a sales manager. I want to be a director. I want to be a vice president. I don't think like that anymore. I think about how can I add impact today and win the day. And if you win the day and you're intentional about your non-negotiables and the contributions you want to make to your brand to continue to evolve your brand, you're going to wake up one day and you're going to look back and say, wow, look at these amazing accomplishments. Look at these amazing relationships. And that's the position I'm in now. And the future's bright. I can't wait to see where it goes, because every day I get to have amazing conversations that exceed expectations and continue to grow me as a person.
Wonderful. I think one thing which you mentioned about you started a book, you authored a book in 2010, and it didn't give you that success which you expected. Now, if I would try to bring attention everyone that, okay, a person writes a book, it's itself a process. There was a guest in my podcast. She mentioned about the whole process of publication, writing, and all those things, right? That itself is a separate topic. So you went through that much kind of, I would say in a way, ordeal, because you really have to work through, think through, find all those things out, and then eventually it get published. You are pretty excited, but you may not be able to get the success which you're expecting. Now, that's where I think that is the point where your true mindset, resiliency, and all those things which you always talk about comes into the picture. Because when we talk about this, people get nice feeling. Oh, yeah, that's good. But then are we able to execute that? That is important. So you mentioned that it may not give you that success which you expected, but it opens the other kind of opportunities, door of opportunities, because there's always something which gives you a learning, as you mentioned, from any kind of activity which you do in your life. And I think one thing I really try to be within my, even in my soul, is that when you start learning, your world is your library. So for example, like some 6-7 years back, when I just drive through, I do not see for sale real estate deals out there, right? I mean, just for sale board. Now I see everywhere whenever I go. Why? Because now that is one of the things which I'm really interested in. So those houses, those things were already there. But now my perspective has changed. My mindset has changed to looking at the same things in a different perspective. So yeah, please go ahead. You have some perspective around that?
That's it. It's that abundance. Yeah, it's that abundance mindset.
Yes.
There's so much opportunity out there. And I think, often we look at it, maybe not even intentionally, but we look at it from a scarcity mindset. Something happens that we don't agree with or appreciate, or the perception of us isn't fair. All of these things have happened to me. I've lost a tremendous amount of times, lost deals, lost jobs, lost out on promotions. But I've learned over time that it's all about not reacting and responding with emotion. It's all about how do I continue to get up and bring my best self to every single day. And if you keep moving forward, you will find success. It's really that simple. There's nowhere to go but forward. And so, those are the types of things that have really served me well. So it's all about that abundance mindset. And, that's why I encourage people to look at, how can you uniquely add value? You made an interesting comment earlier, Saurabh, about podcasts, right? And the percentage of them that are concluded after 20 episodes, right?
Yeah.
Same thing about books. 95% of them sell less than 100 copies. I've been able to sell thousands in my lifetime, right? And so, just it's the diligence and the discipline that we bring. And, book royalties aren't going to feed my family of 5 here, but they've created relationships that would not have existed otherwise. I wouldn't be where I am today if I hadn't written that book 12 years ago and created some of the relationships that I did, or made my resume and my brand stand out. See, that's the other thing. I didn't have a prominent LinkedIn presence 12 years ago when I was looking for that job. But having written a book, it made my resume stand out. I got in the room for the interview, and that's where I was able to articulate the value that I would bring to that organization, and I got the job. So, the key element is it's not one thing. It is how you create, evolve, and live and breathe your brand.
So true. It's a process, and you just have to keep on learning and evolving, and also at the same time ensure that you will get some kind of, depends on the situation, maybe a bit of a suffering, shortcomings, bad feedback. So you have to make sure that you have to weather them all. It's not like, people say, you are a terrible speaker, and then you are all in depression and all, and you're not going forward with that. And also get a good company of people who can encourage you, give a critical advice with some action plan. It's not only like there are some people who complain, but then maybe if you would like to be having a learning ability, you can be like, okay, so what's your perspective? How do I improve in that? So those are some of the things I think which gets you from one place to another, and then you can just keep on going through from that part. So, yeah, I think that's a great conversation. I can go on and on, but let's go to the concluding part of our discussion. So I have 2 questions for you. One is, what are the books you have right now? And we can obviously put in all the links in the show notes here once people look at it, and how people can reach out to you.
Yeah, I love that. And Saurabh, thanks again so much. This was a phenomenal discussion. I'm very passionate about this topic because it's been so good to me. And so I feel a duty to share that with others. So my first book was published in 2010. It's Birth of a Salesman. I took the unique approach. There's a lot of great sales books out there, a lot of great sales leadership books out there. I didn't want to reinvent the wheel. So I created almost a parable type, like 5 dysfunctions of a team, where I created a fictional character who goes through, has these experiences, and then he writes the book inside the book. And that's what I've done now for 4 different books. And I'm working on a 5th now. So my second book was The Salesman Against the World. My third was called A Salesman Forever. My fourth was Salesman on Fire, which has been the best-selling thus far. And I'm currently writing one called The Show Must Go On, and all feature the same fictional protagonist. As far as where people can find me, I'm everywhere. LinkedIn is a great place. I'm also out prominently on Twitter, YouTube. And then, as I mentioned, I just joined TikTok, so check that out. But no, I really do. I encourage people to reach out. I love connecting and seeing where we can connect and have mutual synergies. So I encourage everyone to do so.
That's great. I think it's funny to mention that in my podcast name, which is LetsTok, has TikTok One Talk, and I'm not in TikTok yet. So I'll take that as a part of the queue that I'll try to work on that part as well. That's great. I think one last question, which I would like to seek your advice for the people who are trying to develop a brand. Maybe 1, 2, or 3 steps which you can kind of advise them as a part of a takeaway from this discussion, and obviously they can expand it from those that advice.
I love that question. So take a step back. Think about, what are you really good at, and what do you love? What are you uniquely qualified to do? What are your strengths? What are your superpowers? Think about problems that exist. And this could be problems that exist in your work, in your career, in the world, right? because ultimately you want to use your unique strengths and superpowers to solve problems and to deliver success or wins to other people. Think about the relationships that you're going to need in order to achieve what you want to achieve. Do you have those relationships today? I am in sales. And so I thought very intentionally about what are the relationships that I'm going to need in order to exceed my goals, or what are the relationships that I'm going to need in my organization to move up. And so, do I have those relationships? Do I have the right messaging and branding in order to convey what I want to convey? And then lastly, think about the different mediums. I don't discriminate against any medium to create a relationship. Hence why I joined TikTok. I know nothing about it. But yesterday I was having a conversation with someone I work with. They were talking about, different social media elements. And I was like, what the heck, right? Created it, made a video, posted it. It's already getting hits, right? I'm already getting followers. And so, here's the thing. Think about the different mediums that you're comfortable with. I have a blog. I do video. I do podcasts. I'll write articles. Think about the different mediums that you like, that you're comfortable with. And remember, your approach is going to be personal to you. But the benefit of this is, from my vantage point, the benefit for me has been finding a lot of different mediums that I'm comfortable with creating relationships in, and different conduits for my messaging. And then be responsive, be communicative, and be authentic in how you seek these relationships. Because I connect with a lot of people on LinkedIn, but I never, ever send a message saying, hey, these are all the things that I feel like I can do for you. Because that's the quickest thing to get you deleted. I try to send things of value, and, I try to create real conversations. So create conversations, be provocative, be unique, stand out, but keep your passions and your superpowers at the heart of it, because that is what's going to make you keep getting up and doing more. See, that's the last element of it all, right? It's all about that resilience of it. You're gonna success isn't going to look like what you think it'll look like. You may get knocked down. You may not succeed the way you think you're going to. It's not a straight line from where you are to where you think you want to go. So, the key is keep learning all along the way, but keep your strengths and your superpowers at the heart of it, because if you're passionate about it, that's what's going to make you see it through.
That's great. That's great. Wonderful. So basically, be passionate, understand your superpowers, try to reach out to the people, have a good conversation, and provide value. And I think, and one of the most important thing is take the action now, because if you procrastinate, there's no perfect time. There's no perfect place. Today is the time. Today is the place. So that being said, Carson, thank you so much for providing your insights. I love the conversation, and I wish you all the best for your future endeavors.
Thank you, Saurabh. My pleasure. So great to connect with you. And thank you for the insightful discussion.